last night's game against the Timberwolves, saw the Suns see their fortunes reversed in a positive manner in the second half offensively. In the first half, they did a good job getting some decent shot quality off of their traditional looks. They just weren't able to execute in terms of finishing said plays. However, in the second half, they were able to, like I mentioned, kind of reverse those fortunes and start seeing the ball go into the basket. And they did a lot of it via their stack action in the second half with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Chris Paul is the initiator, Devin Booker is the pop man after setting the back screen for the roller. And then in addition to that, which is one entity we're going to break down, we're also going to look on the defensive side, which is where they really won the game. We're going to look at some of the reps where Okogie was in the post defending against Karl-Anthony Towns, which eventually saw doubles to which they rotated out of after he contained the post. And then we're also going to look at some of the Suns' defensive reps against an action that the Timberwolves love to go to a lot, which is their empty corner pick and roll variation. So let's go ahead and dive into the film. All right, the first play here, we're going to see they're in their stack alignment, and we're going to see Chris bringing it up the floor. We got him setting the ram screen for Busy as Busy comes up to set the pick on ball. Nas Reed plays a little bit closer to the level than Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns. But all of that is not even going to matter on this one because the disdain that Chris Paul has and how he takes so personally when people try to go under screens on him is a long developing relationship that I love to see play out because he takes them so personally, as he should. And just to see him and to see teams consistently try to blend in unders here and there, just to kind of try to call his bluff because they know he likes to play make firstly, secondly, and sometimes even thirdly before even looking to score for himself. So this kind of back and forth game within the game where teams and sometimes even just individual players kind of try to pull at the strings of his tendencies is always fun to see play out. So it's fun to see him come off of this one and just completely disregard the play and just take advantage of what was given from the defense and knock that down. That was the first basket of a string of big-time buckets that he would get in the second half. This next rep here we're going to see again, Ram into Spain. They got the stack alignment. And notice where Devin Booker is aligned. Sometimes he's in the middle of the paint. Sometimes he's underneath the basket before he sprays out above the break. And then sometimes like here, and even in the first rep, he's above the free throw line. And being that high is typically when they like to use stack alignment to get into pick and roll, but use Booker as the back man just to move tags. Moving tags being moving whoever it is that's closest to the pick and roll, defense-wise, that's off ball, but typically that's on the opposite side of the pick, would typically try to tag the roller and helping the two primary defenders in said pick and roll with guarding the low man, or guarding the roll man, excuse me. So in this rep we're going to see here, it would be Anthony Edwards if Devin Booker was just typically spaced on the weak side, which is where he eventually goes to. It would be Anthony Edwards tagging right here, just putting a hand on Bismack Biyombo to take away the open area that we now see unveiling here on the roll. It will usually be Anthony Edwards to help him take this before it gets to where the low man now, Karl-Anthony Towns, is. However, because of the stack alignment and by virtue of the positioning and the movement and who's involved in the action, when Chris comes off of this pick and Booker sprays, Edwards is taken out of the play. The short roll is open, and this is what the premise of the play is. And we see Bismack with a wide open attempt that unfortunately he smokes here, and you can see how frustrated and annoyed Chris Paul was because they generated such a high shot quality and look for a player like Bismack that's in one of his best spots on the floor. And, of course, he misses this one. But the premise and the reason behind them running this action in this play specifically with this type of alignment is abundant. And they get into it again here, middle of the fourth quarter here. You're going to see this time is with DeAndre Ayton. They get a little bit of a ghost screen here from Josh Okogie before Ayton comes in to set the screen. And then look at where Devin Booker is starting this one at again. He's at the free throw line, which, again, is just to move the tag. But it doesn't even matter, again, on this one because Chris Paul was in rhythm as a scorer. And he started playing with the mesh point of these plays. You can kind of see the mesh point being where Minnesota has to decide, are they going to keep Gobert there and then have Mike Conley late switch onto the roller? Are they going to put two to the ball for a subtle second, which is essentially what they did here? or are they going to just flat out switch it? And they did neither of those here. Chris is being patient in his read. Also reads that there's no low man, but he also can see Mike Conley kind of trying to get into a little bit of a late switch before he fully commits. And all in the process of all of that is Chris, in one of his sweet spots, he's able to do a little pump fake just to pause the defense, kind of slow the time down a little bit, slow his momentum down, and you know that's a layup. All right, and then this next rep here, they're gonna get right back into it. They just get into it with a little bit different of an alignment. They get a little zipper cut here, a little zipper screen for Chris Paul, and then they get into the stack alignment. Again, look at where Devin Booker is. He's not sinking into the paint. Again, he's above the free throw line, which is gonna naturally open up the roll as Chris comes off. And I want to pay attention even more so to the angle that Chris chooses to come off of this at, because I mentioned in the open that Naz Reid plays a lot shorter of a drop than Karl-Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert. By virtue of that, if Chris stretches him just enough, that's going to hold while his defender is navigating over the screen, especially if they don't commit to a switch right away, which they don't. It's kind of like showing recovery here. And Chris is able to beat the coverage with a well-timed and just a wicked bounce pass. But even more into the details, again, looking at where Devin Booker starts to play, because of where he's popping off to and who he is, you can't just sit on the help line. You have to at least give a couple of steps in committing to him. Otherwise, Chris would probably just toss this overhead and he would get it to Devin Booker, and now they're playing off of a closeout. But because Mike Conley understands that, you can kind of see him even wanting to tag, but he can't fully commit to it. And while he's at a point of indecision is where Chris throws this bounce pass, this wicked bounce pass, and Aiden's able to get there without any attention from the weak side. And that's just one way that the Suns were really compromising the defensive responsibilities of the Timberwolves. And then they're going to get into it one last time here to cap things off. Customarily to the Suns, if they find something that you can't guard, they will spam it over and over and over again until you show that you can guard it and can do so for more than just one stop. So now they're going back here to close the game, and it's Kevin Durant in the bottom right corner. So it's going to be Kyle Anderson, who's the low man, but because it's Kevin Durant, he's not going to want to come over at all. And because Devin Booker is going to be the pop man again, and Edwards doesn't want to sit on the help line and tag the roller either. So Chris gets an under here, but it's a good screen that throws Mike Conley off balance some. And again, by virtue of the spacing with everything, and there's no tag on the roller, but Rudy Gobert stays committed to CP3 a little bit longer than expected, Chris is able to keep the attention. Aiden's able to get deeper into his role, way deeper into his role. Doesn't have to get hit on the short roll. And he's able to get to that launching pad in the restricted area, again, with no tag responsibility because it's Devin Booker and Kevin Durant that are on the weak side here. And A is able to get an alley-oop finish here that should have been an N1. All right, now we're going to transition to two quick reps where Josh Okogie was tasked with guarding Karl-Anthony Towns in the mid-post. So we're going to see right away, this is in semi-transition, it's a secondary break. Okogie instantly gets his hands to initiate physicality and force Karl-Anthony Towns to navigate, exert energy, and exert force to try to get a post touch against him. You see him working, again, physical to the legal limit. Look at where this catch is. Cat would want to catch this initially around here, which is where he kind of curves in. But because of Kogie's positioning, again, being physical to the legal limit, sinking into that bottom leg, he pushes this all the way out to almost, honestly, his top foot is on the three-point line at the initial catch point, which is exactly what you want, which only aids the eventual double team that's going to come after Cat commits to this post touch in isolation. He gets two dribbles in, and then Chris doubles from the passer. Then we're going to see the defensive dominoes fall in rotation. Devin Booker does a good job not committing too soon to Mike Conley, who's going to be on this dive cut here. And then they're going to do an excellent job here helping to put out the fire, being DeAndre Ayton putting out the fire of the cut down the middle, the gut cut. And then you see Kevin Durant sinking in inside of Rudy Gobert to take away his look and also keep him on a box out, potentially on a shot here from Mike Conley. And then Devin Booker's the field man. But because they do such a good job in their rotations and with their positioning, Kevin Durant's able to rotate out of this on time and on task to where they don't even have to get into the field rotation. They don't have to have all of their defensive dominoes fall. They keep the defensive structure and shell intact, and they're able to get a good contest and then flow into offense. All right, then this next rep, this final rep here with Okogie again, pushing Karl-Anthony Towns off of his mark. He's posted up here, supposed to be at the elbow, but look at how Koji is leaning on him, forcing his catch point to go further and further away from the basket. So now he's in the middle where a logo would be if they had a logo in this little mid-range area of the floor. Devin Booker's going to send a double, but look at Okogie, like I mentioned in the last film session, contesting catches and then just getting his hands involved when guys have the ball in isolation against him. All of that buys time, and it forces Karl-Anthony Towns to terminate his dribble, and then look at how Devin Booker double teams aggressively, getting his hands involved after that. And then look at all of just this general activity here. This could have been a travel from Karl-Anthony Towns, but he ends up getting this pass out. It's heavily contested, which buys time for Devin Booker to then get into his next rotation. Kevin Durant's already on schedule for his. Devin Booker's able to kick out to the weak side, and they get another great contest up on the shot, and then they're able to get the rebound and flow into offense. All right, and then now let's dive into a couple of their empty corner reps defensively against the Timberwolves. So we're going to see the first play here is early in the first quarter. It's Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. They go throw into a screen and roll in the empty corner, as I mentioned. And look at the navigation from Devin Booker. He doesn't get enough credit for how much effort he gives into defense more often than not. And right here, for DeAndre Ayton to stay in his responsibility and drop and contain and everything, he has to get a great and energetic and active navigation of this initial screen so that he doesn't have to commit to the ball handler. And what Mike Conley is good at is playing with pace in this action to where it puts pressure on the point of attack defender. If they even hesitate in their navigating at all, it's initially going to turn into a 2-on-1, and then that's where they eat them alive because it's in an empty corner because there's no opportunity for anybody to tag over on to Rudy Gobert's role if DeAndre Ayton is put in that position. But because of the help from Okogie at the nail, in addition to Devin Booker fighting over the screen and really not even being screened much at all, they're able to send this rep off script, and then they're able to win that possession. All right, this next rep here is going to come after a play broke down. It's going to be Chris Paul here against Anthony Edwards, and they're going to do a good job between him and DeAndre Ayton icing and downing this rep here. So they do a good job keeping it on the outer third so that he can't get to the middle on this screen that Rudy Gobert is trying to set. As you can see, the screening angle there. And then DeAndre Ayton is going to squeeze over to the baseline as well as to the sideline to kind of funnel this away. However, because of this coverage and when you're committing to the ball in a sense here, that's going to force your weak side to be on schedule with their rotations. And it's going to be a good cut, just kind of laying in the weeds from Jaden McDaniels. However, at fault here is going to be Devin Booker as well as Josh Okogie because neither one of these two commits to sinking in. They both kind of just stand there. And there's no real communication, which is something that Monty Williams spoke about in the presser after the game, that they had an issue with early in the game. No one commits to this rotation, and then McDaniels is going to be open for this easy little dump-off pass, and then you can see the communication between Okogie and Devin Booker. Here's how I still frame it. One of them has to commit to sinking. It should be Devin Booker here because he's already the low man on this play. So Devin Booker, even though it's Okogie's man that cuts, should be committing to sinking in and taking away any cut or any type of driving action to keep this away from crossing the help line. And then Okogie, which is where he is right now, would be the fill man responsible for switching with Devin Booker here and taking for Michael Conley, who's in the corner. Neither one of them commit to it, and then you see the communication there. And as a team, they will clean it up after this rep, which we're going to see here. As we got Chris Paul here and DeAndre Ayton again icing and then downing it in the empty corner again. Ayton does a great job picking the perfect angle. If he's any inch closer to the basket than he is to splitting the difference here, this is going to be a wicked pocket pass for Mike Conley to get over to Rudy Gobert. But instead, by virtue of the positioning from DeAndre Ayton, they're able to take away this look. And then DeAndre Ayton is able to get into the next rotation, which is just turning around and playing defense. This is a great gap cut here from Kyle Anderson. But DeAndre Ayton gets a great contest up, and then they're able to get the rebound, and they're off to the races. And then on this final rep here, we're going to see them defending against some bump action. So we see initially the Minnesota Timberwolves kind of disguising this empty corner rep with some bump action. So we get the cross screen here for Anthony Edwards. He comes off, and then it's a little bit of screen to screener as he comes off of the Gobert screen. And then they're going to flip it instantly into an angle screen and roll in the empty corner here. It's with Okogie and Bismack Biyombo. And we're going to look at Okogie initially, as he does a good job navigating over and just staying connected to where Bismack doesn't have to commit to the drive. And they also, in addition to all of that, an issue we saw with Okogie and Booker before is now Kevin Durant as the low man, and Devin Booker is going to be the fill man. So the low man, Kevin Durant, is sunk in to take over for the drive. They're able to make Mike Conley pick up his dribble, and then they're able to rotate out, and they keep the defensive shell completely intact without getting a paint touch from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then they're forcing them to play late in the shot clock. Kyle Anderson is a good basketball player, but he's not a creator, especially late in the shot clock. Chris Paul does a great job containing the post, gets a hand on that, and it ends up being an offensive foul. The Suns were just really nailing a lot of little things on defense, and then really got it together in the second half offensively as well. And that flow in tandem allowed for them to go on a big run at the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, and then really just holding down the fort for the most part the rest of the way. Very impressive win for the Suns under some duress from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who applied pressure. And this is just a good win, ingratiating Kevin Durant back into the lineup.